Daniel had already decided that today would be his last. The rain soaked through his hoodie as he stood on the edge of the sidewalk, waiting for a walk signal that didn't matter. No one looked at him. No one ever did. That was part of what made the decision so easy. He had become invisible. He hadn't spoken to anyone in days, hadn't returned his therapist's calls in weeks. The weight of grief, failure, and the constant ache in his spine made every breath feel like a betrayal. He told himself this wasn't giving up, it was just letting go. But then, from inside a little bakery across the street, he saw her. She was laughing softly with the barista, her eyes crinkling in a way that made the rain seem a little less cold. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she wore a cardigan 2 sizes too big. She looked ordinary. But then, she turned and saw him. Not glanced. Not looked past. Saw him. And then she smiled. Not a polite smile. Not one of pity or forced courtesy. Just warm, honest, like a hug he hadn't realized he needed. He blinked. The walk signal turned green. He crossed the street. Not to end anything, but to find out who she was. He would never tell her that she saved his life with that one smile. And she would never guess that such a simple moment could change the course of someone's entire world. But that's the thing about kindness. It doesn't need to know its power to be powerful. Daniel Moore hadn't always felt like a ghost. Just 2 years ago, he was a trauma nurse in Charlotte, skilled, confident, and the kind of guy who brought calm to chaos. Long hours in the ER never fazed him. Saving lives had given his own life purpose. Until the crash. A drunk driver blew through a red light on a rainy night, slamming into the passenger side where Eliza, his fiancée, sat. She died instantly. Daniel survived, but barely. His spine fractured, career ended, and the guilt swallowed everything else whole. Now, in Asheville, he lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment filled with reminders of a life that had slipped through his fingers. Painkillers sat in the kitchen drawer. A half-written letter to Eliza gathered dust in his desk. He saw no one, spoke to no one, and convinced himself that he didn't matter anymore. Until that morning at the bakery. Emily Carter had her own quiet sadness. She'd been smiling through grief since the day her younger brother, Noah, took his life at 19. She was only 20 at the time. She never saw it coming. The guilt had been unbearable. How could she, someone so close to him, not see the signs? So she made herself a promise. No one near her would ever feel invisible again. She didn't join national campaigns or post hashtags. She believed in the little things. Eye contact, remembering names, asking how someone's day was and meaning it. Her job as a children's librarian gave her structure, but it was the bakery, her daily stop before work, where she practiced her quiet mission. She never imagined that a man on the brink of giving up would be the one person who needed her smile most. And Daniel never imagined that a stranger's simple kindness would begin to pull him back from the edge. They didn't know it yet, but 2 people scarred by loss were about to find something they thought was gone forever: hope. Daniel hadn't planned to go inside the bakery. But something about her smile, Emily's smile, cut through the fog that clung to him like a second skin. For the first time in weeks, he felt seen. Not judged. Not pitied. Just noticed. He stood outside for a full minute, watching her laugh with the barista, her hands wrapped around a paper cup. Then, on impulse, he pulled open the door. The warmth hit him like a wall. Fresh cinnamon, espresso, vanilla. It felt like stepping into a life he didn't think he deserved anymore. Emily noticed him instantly. "Hey," she said gently. "Cold out there, huh?" Daniel nodded, unsure why his heart was beating so fast. "Hot chocolate's my go-to on days like this," she offered, her tone light but sincere. "It fixes just about everything. Want me to grab you one?" He hesitated. He wasn't used to kindness without strings. Without pity. "Sure," he said finally. His voice came out rough from disuse. She smiled again, that same smile. Pure. Soft. Real. Moments later, she returned with a steaming cup and slid it across the counter toward him. I'm Emily, by the way. I've seen you walk past here before. Daniel blinked. She noticed him. Daniel, he murmured, holding the cup like it was something sacred. There was a pause. Long enough for silence to feel meaningful, but not awkward. I'm glad you came in today, she said, her voice a shade quieter. Sometimes the right places find us when we need them most. And for some reason, that simple sentence hit him harder than it should have. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a dramatic rescue. It was just a smile, a cup of hot chocolate, and a few words offered without expectation. But for Daniel, it cracked the armor he'd built around himself. He didn't tell her what that moment meant. He wouldn't, not yet. But something shifted inside him. For the first time in 2 years, he felt the smallest flicker of warmth. Of being human again. And she had no idea she'd lit it. Daniel came back the next day. And the next. At first, he didn't say much. Just ordered hot chocolate and sat quietly at the corner table. But Emily always greeted him with that same warmth. Never pressing, never prying, just present. Over time, Daniel began to talk. A little at first. Then more. He told her he used to be a nurse. That he'd moved to Asheville, for the quiet. He didn't mention Eliza. Not yet. But Emily never asked for explanations he wasn't ready to give. Instead, she told him about her work at the library. The stories she read to kids. The way their laughter echoed through the halls like tiny bells. She told him about her brother, Noah, not the way he died, but the way he lived. How he used to draw cartoon versions of everyone in their family. How he made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. They both spoke in pieces. But those pieces, slowly, began to fit. Daniel started walking more. Sleeping better. He even called his therapist again, just to talk. Emily noticed his shoulders sat a little higher. His eyes met hers longer. He'd bring her a bookmark he found, or a silly quote he scribbled on a napkin. Once, he brought a book he thought the kids at her library would like. And without realizing it, Emily began to heal, too. She'd been carrying guilt for so long, guilt that her smile hadn't been enough for Noah. But now, here was this quiet man, returning day after day because of that very same smile. One evening, as they were locking up the bakery together, Daniel paused. You know that first day I came in? He asked. She nodded, curious. I wasn't planning on making it through that day, he said, voice low. But then, you smiled. And for some reason, it felt like, maybe the world wasn't done with me yet. Emily's breath caught. Her hand instinctively reached for his. And in that moment, two people who had once felt irreparably broken, stood side by side, slowly realizing that healing doesn't come in thunderclaps. Sometimes, it starts with a smile. Winter turned to spring. The bakery windows bloomed with paper flowers and handwritten notes from customers. Inside, Daniel and Emily sat together more often than apart. He still struggled with grief, still had bad days, but they didn't swallow him whole anymore. And Emily, once quietly burdened with guilt she couldn't name, now found peace in the way he looked at her, like she was enough. One rainy afternoon, nearly a year after that first smile, Daniel waited outside the library, holding a small, weathered book. Emily stepped out with her tote bag over her shoulder and her hair a little damp. You're early, she teased. Daniel smiled, nerves flickering behind his eyes. He handed her the book, The Velveteen Rabbit, its spine cracked from years of love. I used to read this to patients in the hospital, he said. Especially the ones who were scared. I thought, maybe it was time you had it. She opened it slowly, heart already full. Tucked inside was a note, handwritten in his neat, careful script. You made me real again. Like in the story. You saw me when I didn't want to be seen. You reminded me how to feel, how to hope, how to live. I love you, Emily. Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. She looked up, eyes shimmering. I love you too, Daniel, she whispered, arms wrapping around him like she was holding something precious. Because she was. In that moment, neither of them needed to speak of the past, The lives they'd lost, the guilt they'd carried, the long, silent ache of being alone. They had survived it. Together. And as they stood in the rain again, like that first day, Emily smiled, soft and white and full of light. Daniel laughed, brushing a drop of rain from her cheek. That smile, he said. It still saves me. She blushed, eyes glowing. I never knew it could. But now she did. And maybe, just maybe, that was the greatest gift of all.